Hello again. We're back for the third interview of the evening, my second to last of this series, which I'm super excited. I'm just excited for all of these interviews. This is so much fun. I never really knew how much I would love interviewing, but there we go. Hello. That Instagram is working today. Hello. Hello.
Hi,
How are
Catherine.
you doing?
I'm good. How are
I'm
you?
good. I am gonna have no voice after today, but I'm good.
I'm sure.
Okay. Did you have a good day so far?
Uh, um, yeah,
Maybe.
it's been like since release, it's been a lot of I don't know. Release week is always like emotional for me, and this isn't even I released last week, and it's hard. It's always hard for me. Like to let go of a project and to move on. So I think I'm still decompressing. I have a lot of cleaning to do in my office. And for Thanksgiving, my Thanksgiving that's coming up. So,
I know I know the feeling. I think after I released my very first book, I was so burnt out that and just it didn't feel like a breakup, but there was just like this weird energy in my body because you work so hard for so long, and I
yeah.
just laid on the couch for days. I couldn't function. I was just like, okay, I market, obviously marketing, and we market until we die, but like we're done, but we're not done. And it is what it is. But yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I think it would probably feel like sending your kids away to college.
Yeah, that's a
Because
great way to put it.
because then I think it must be what an empty nester feels like because you get so attached to your characters. For me, they're like my
Yeah.
kids. Because, the reader sees just the part that's in the book, but we see kind of their whole lives. Like it's like my characters are it's like looking at a photo album and I can turn to a page in their life like when Chris is 18 and I know exactly what happened to him and I can see those like reels playing in my mind and it's like I'm there. And then I can flip to a different page and it's like, "Oh, I remember that. I was there for that." And it's the same way with all of my characters. So I feel like I've seen their entire life and now they're not mine anymore and they're the readers and I love that I can share that, but at the same time like I don't have these people with me anymore and I think it's a big adjustment to get through that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you had, correct me if I'm wrong, but like you had Chris and Daphne for a while because they were kind of in like the original, like your last book, right?
Yeah. Yes, Chris came from the last book, which is the last book in a trilogy. Like a trilogy of standalones, but sort of the same characters were in all of the books. He showed up in the last book. He was supposed to be totally different. He was never supposed to get his own book, which is why I named him Chris and not something a lot cooler. I would have picked a better name, but I'm sorry, he got stuck with it, and that's how people work. Um, and then, yeah, he just wouldn't stop popping up in scenes, and I realized I want to write more and more of him. Um, so I did.
That, yeah, and obviously you nailed it. So,
Oh, well, I nailed a book. We'll see.
well, your marketing, like the aesthetic and the energy and the vibe of your whole profile is inspiring to say the very least. But I love all of it. So,
Thank you. I don't, yeah, I'm just doing what I see other people do. It's a lot of copying because,
well, we all do that to some degree.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I try to credit where I can that like the inspiration from other authors and bookstagrammers. It's so hard. It's so hard to know what dumb trend is gonna take off. And and it's like, okay, I have to do that thing now. Okay. And sometimes it ends up really cool and cute and something you can add and yeah, I've never really had a cohesive page before, so this is my first time attempting that, and I don't think I'll stick with it, but it's been fun.
Yeah, well, like every time I like go to your page, like when we first met, and I was like, scoping you out and all that stuff, as we all do,
Right.
and I was just like, damn, this is awesome. So like your covers for the Last Responder series are beautiful, and like I love that like noir energy. So yeah, right up my alley. Anyway, I'm the target audience, if you were wondering.
Oh yeah, I don't really, yeah, my target audience was me and like maybe two other people will like this. So yeah, that's nice. It's nice to know. It's nice to hear that my like niche vision is coming through to the right people. So I'm glad it is.
Yeah, and I think that like as niche as we get, the human experience is very like broad. Like we're all humans who just love connection, and we're all humans who love art, and we're all humans who want to read about people doing fun stuff. And a lot of us love that like darker, more macabre, like bones and skulls
Hmm.
and stuff. Like my daughter's middle name, I named her after Temperance Brennan from Bones. So
That's
yeah,
awesome. I love that name.
it's a solid name for
It
sure. And
is.
I'm not going to work on it until next year, but I'm starting to outline, or re-outline rather, a trilogy about an anthropologist and archaeologist who go on like a journey together and go through a bunch of nonsense and drama. But yeah, it's nice to get into that like nitty-gritty stuff sometimes, instead of just like I love a small town romance, a Hallmark energy, don't get me wrong, but sometimes we need Halloween as much as we need Christmas, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I was just taking I took Sarah McLean's conflict class, The Art of Mastering Great Conflict, I think it's
Oh,
called. Um, and Christopher Rice, there were other authors that would come into the class and do like roundtables or basically panels on Zoom. And I think it was Christopher Rice and Sarah who were talking about specifics. And this is something that like I've edited books and I'm constantly saying get more specific here or get more specific over here. It doesn't matter. Like niche down so far, you think no one will have any idea what you're talking about, and then it becomes universal. And then Christopher Rice was the one who brought up this thing, like, and he's not the one who says it. It's some famous author that I should definitely know, like Dickens or something. It's not Dickens, but there's the specifics carry the universal.
mm,
So the more specific you are to a feeling or to a type of person, the more universal it is felt. And I think as authors, we tend to make things very broad. Like the small town is everybody's quintessential small town, but by not having a specific business that's like that weird
mhm,
thing, by not naming it something really weird and off kilter, or by not doing the outlandish thing, we're making it so that our audience actually can't relate to it.
mhm.
And I think so that's why I think people do relate to my books about death care workers and my books about forensic anthropologists because it's specific. Yeah, you might not be road tripping with a skull in your back hatch, but you've been on a road trip before.
Yeah,
Everybody knows the feeling of stopping at the Welcome Center and getting a bunch of brochures and wanting to stop at these quirky places along the way. And I think, yeah, so I think writing in the specifics makes it more relatable. And it doesn't matter what you're writing, people are going to relate to
abs-
it. Or they're going to hate it, but you're going to have haters either way. So,
yeah,
we don't write to our haters, we write to the people that love us.
yeah.
And
And at the very least, write for ourselves, because we have to read our books 4 trillion times.
yes,
Dear
absolutely.
God, the editing process is exhausting.
Hmm.
How long did it take you to do The Remains of Christmas?
It took me a year, but I was working on The Bones of Love sort of
Mhm.
concurrently. So I started writing the Remains of Christmas was supposed to go into a Christmas anthology. It was supposed to be 10,000 words, and I thought, well, I'll just write a short story. That very quickly in October of last year, it would had already like overcome short story territory. And I said, okay, I'll still include it in the anthology and I'll make it a novella. And then Daphne came in and her character really got drilled down and I figured out who she was. And like I said in the written interview with you, like she really took the story and ran with it. And then I thought, this is this is not a novella. I don't want an anthology to have this.
Yep.
This is good, and this has to be a full book. So, so it took me about a year. I'm a very slow writer. I don't outline at all. So I just basically the first draft is, I mean, it's not a final draft by any means, but the first draft is me watching my characters act out what they're acting out. Um I don't feel like I make decisions for them. I don't feel like I create these characters. It's like they are slowly revealed to me,
Yeah.
and then I just have to watch them. And sometimes I'm like, okay, let's throw them in this situation and see what they do. And I'm just, in this book particularly, I am like shocked by what they did. And yeah, I don't feel like I created any of it. I feel like I was just watching the movie, and trying to write it down as best as I could.
Yeah, I use
Um,
the term writing up incident reports. I used to work in a daycare, and so like kids would get in a tussle or somebody would get hurt or something. You have to write up an incident report,
yeah,
and that I sit there and my characters do whatever they're gonna do, and I can literally be actively typing, and I outline like an insane person, but I will be typing and I'm in my body, but I'm not in my body, and like things will just happen, and I'll be like, cool, you just invented a whole new character. What do I do with this now? And it's brilliant. I can't delete it, right? Like, so I get it.
yeah. I really like that. I wish I could outline too, because I don't mind like the idea of having an outline and then completely veering from it, but I can't have an outline. I will never get the work done because I can't, if I think too hard about an ending or if I think too hard about scenes, usually I start out with a few scenes in a book and it's like, okay, I know we've got to get there. Um, like with Undertaking Love, I just kept seeing like Bethany on a hook, like dangling from a hook. And I was like, how am I going to get her on this hook so they can do what they need to do there? But that's like, that was the driving force, and that created, um, I, I
Adventure.
don't know. I still don't know how that worked out. It did. It worked out like seamlessly, but um, yeah, I don't know.
It just
I don't know
works.
where I was going with that.
That's okay. No, I definitely understand. And you said in your written answers too, I have it like written down, so I quote you a little bit closer than just like paraphrasing, but like there's no shoulds or have tos in the writing process. And I really loved what you said there about that, because what works for me isn't going to work for you, isn't going to work for, the 7 other authors in our giveaway or everybody watching, whatever, right? Like we can give as much writing advice as we want and like what we've learned by trial and error, but at the end of the day that person has to sit down at the keyboard and they have to do whatever their process is, and that can change from book to book as well. I don't know
Mhm.
if you've experienced that at all, but like how I wrote my first book is not how I wrote this last book that I just published on Tuesday, right? Like it changes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you're familiar with Becca Syme's Better Faster Academy and her work with the Clifton Strengths.
No.
But you take this test. It's like a personality test sort of, but instead of telling you whether you're your Myers-Briggs type or your Enneagram, it tells you your top 10 out of 34 strengths. And these are, they're not, they're things that you've cultivated, not necessarily ingrained in you, but they might be ingrained in you as well. But basically, what, and she coaches you. So you find out your strengths, and then she coaches you, or her people coach you through this. And then you find out how best to utilize them. And the part that I love about it is like my Enneagram is a 4, and one of the things that said that I read about fours is like it's basically all crap. It's like, sorry, you're a 4. Life's gonna be really hard. And
Oh.
that's what I got, and it is, and it's hard, but um, and you've got to work on. I forgot what it says. I wish I knew it because specifics, right?
Hmm.
I wish I knew specifically what this piece of advice was, but it's like your tendency is to do this. We advise you do not do this. Do this instead. And it's like, so just don't be this way that you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Be the complete opposite. And no advice on how to get there. Just be that. So you're telling me, like, here's my personality, be the total opposite of that. Strengths is the opposite of that. It's like, here are your top 10 strengths. Do those things more. Don't worry about your other ones. And
Mm.
I love that. It's like my bottom strengths, I don't remember what they are because they don't matter. I'm never achiever. I want to be an achiever. I'm never going to be an achiever. Um and that's I don't have to be because I can use my other strengths to achieve.
Yeah.
And I'll get there. But she uh, but like my top strength is intellection, which basically means I have to think for a really long time about everything. And but that's my process. Like maybe other people need to outline and actively work through it, but my process is going to be I need to think about, I just need to sit somewhere and think. And that is how I'm going to have to write. And so she knows these, all of your strengths so well. She can see how it's going to play out to make your career sustainable for you. And so I'm a big proponent of that. But also, if you're getting words on the page, you're doing it right.
Yeah.
That's your process.
Absolutely.
It doesn't ever get easier. It only gets harder as a writer. As you know more, you want to do a better job.
Hmm.
And that's hard. It's hard to consistently do a better job, and um but we all want to. So if you're sitting there and like, this is my first book, I don't know when it's going to get easier. It's not. But that's the great part about
Hmm.
writing. um it's because it's so good. It feels so good when you finally solved it, when you finally like cracked the code, or you finally understand your character down to their bones, or and it's always like the smallest things that show up here and there. And like one of my good friends is a huge outliner, and she like doesn't make a move without it being planned out in advance. And when she veers off that outline, she can't compute, and things are like, I have so much anxiety for what I'm going to do. And but that's her process. So she can then know, like, okay, let's go back to the outline and take a look at the whole thing and reroute from there. Like that gives me anxiety thinking of going back to an outline, because if I have to plan it when I'm not in the words, I can't create anything. It's just my mind is blank.
Yeah.
Um but I think it's really important that like writing be sustainable. And it's not going to be sustainable if you're trying to do something that other people can do, but is not meant for you. And it's okay to say, this isn't my process. This isn't working for me, and this is not how I'm supposed to do it. Because I think however you sit down to write your first book is maybe going to be your more intuitive way of writing. So keep in touch with that. And I don't
Just
know.
go for
However
it.
different,
Yeah.
yeah, however different that looks, it's right. You're right. If you're writing, you're doing it right for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, my advice to writers is to not give advice to writers, essentially, or say, listen to these other people because they're way smarter.
Yeah, and just like, yeah, don't, it's not a Bible. We don't have to live and die by it. Like maybe it works for this chapter or the first act of a book, or and maybe it doesn't work, or your characters completely change their minds and you're like, "Oh, okay, we're switching genres, I guess." Like it just happens sometimes.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, editing is, or revising is so important. You can always change your mind. Um, and get it back on track if you need to. And then sometimes it also might, maybe it goes to that weird place because it needs to go to that weird place and you need to revise where it came from. And you need to, like, maybe your first act isn't a romance with the meet cute. Maybe your first act is somebody stumbling upon a dead body and you're turned into a murder mystery. But I think, I mean, you do, I think, know how to, there's a little bit of, I mean, honing, of course,
Mhm.
but yeah, just go with it.
Just go with it. Yeah. And you can always edit it. Like even if you write it and you don't like it, you can change it.
Yes.
Even after we publish it. It's not recommended, but you can change it if you really want to. In our, indie author world anyway.
I
So,
just changed the first line of Morgue to Love. So
oh,
my
just
so
couldn't live with it. I respect that.
no, it was boring. So it was going into audiobook, which it just released today, an audiobook. Um,
Congratulations.
thank you. And and I was like,
Yeah.
well, so I was very adamant about first lines not being fun and exciting because I just thought, like, well, it's so, like, it's kind of pretentious to have this outlandish first line, and then your second line doesn't hold up, and then your first chapters just kind of goes downhill from there. And then if you're writing voice, I often found that in bad experiences that I was imagining, the first line would be great, but then the rest of the book wouldn't match that same voice. So I was very reluctant to have like a banger of an opening line. And then I was in the library one day and I was like, I'm just going to read every opening line of every romance book, no matter like what subgenre. So I went down like inspirational, erotic, or like all like every small town and enemies to lovers and the ones that nobody reads anymore and the ones that everyone's reading. They all have banger opening lines. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm obviously wrong here. I need a banger of an opening line. And I wrote one for Remains and I really liked it. I didn't like it at first because it really didn't match my vision of the character, but I tweaked it to where I like it now. And then I went back and all my other books like do not have bangers of opening lines. And we were putting Morgue to Love in audio and like I said, hold on, I've got to fix this. So I don't know if it's a banger of an opening line, but it is very voicey. It is very in character with Sula, and I get to use all my anatomical death phrases. So
Amazing. Someone says it's a great opening line. So,
thank you.
so something about The Remains of Christmas is that you said that it's insta love, but like they fall even deeper into love and like truly, truly connect. So can you tell me like a little bit more about that and like the process that you went through, just like specifically building their relationship from the ground up and then making it so much more like foundational?
Yeah, I'm pretty unapologetic about insta love. I love insta love. I think every love story has a little bit of
Yeah.
insta love, especially written love stories. I think they're all insta love. I think we kid ourselves because we have to keep our characters apart because of conflict. Um, but so I think these characters fall into this insta love, and it is real love. Like it's a magical pairing that they have. Um, and because it's not just lust feels like too cheap for them. But they don't know why. So as you go through as you go through the book, it sort of twists. Like at first they're really like hot and heavy, and I'm laughing because I'm thinking about the Seinfeld episode about hot and heavy, and that's all I can think about. Um, so at first they're all about the physical connection, and they know there's something more there, but they don't know why. And then they can't be having that physical connection anymore, and that's where they find out why. And they find out how well they actually do work together, and how just compatible they are. And I I wanted to show, a really green flag man caregiving, and I wanted to show her, like, she's had some trauma in her past that she minimizes. And I didn't want it to be about the trauma, but I wanted to feel like, okay, Daphne's going to be okay. Like, she's taken care of. And he's not going to let her get away with things. Um, like her whims, yes, he'll bow to her whims, but if she really needs something that's tough, he's gonna allow her that. He's not gonna let her get away with everything. And yeah, but he will protect her, and she'll protect him as well.
And that's beautiful. That's the way it should be.
I think so. It's just supposed to be a happy, fun Christmas magic romance.
So yeah, like it's deep, but it's not so deep that like you need to go to therapy after you read it, kind of a thing.
Right. That's how all my other books are. Like that's how maybe two of my books are. But yeah, I didn't want that for this. Well, my characters didn't want that because I didn't make that choice. Chris and Daphne made those choices. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure I have one book, Words and Music, was supposed to be like a fun, sexy summer rock star romance, and it put me through therapy. And I know there's people that like it hit hard in a good way, right? Because it deals with like addiction and recovery and death and mourning and grief and all of these like really heavy topics that are human and we deal with all of the time to some
Hmm.
degree or another. And there's one scene at the end of it where like my main character, he's sitting in therapy, and it wasn't a scene that I had outlined. And like I said, like I'm an outliner, and it was a scene that just came out of nowhere. And I just wrote it. And then I went back and I read it and I was like, oh, that was for me. That was therapy for me, but it's brilliant. So I'm going to leave it in because maybe it'll help somebody else. And sometimes that's what you need, but like sometimes you just need light and fun and sexy and Christmas magic. So yeah,
Yeah.
it seems like you have a good balance. Like I won't know till I read it, but it sounds like you did a good job.
Thanks. Hope so.
We are like almost done because we, we
Mhm.
we talked very consistently, so good for us. I just want to make sure I hit all of my points. Yeah, okay. The one last question I'm going to leave you with is, so Chris was in an original book in your last book, and then he got his own book. So like moving forward from here, you just released this book, but what are your plans moving forward?
This is a spin-off of the Last Responders series, and that is about a trio of women who work in death care that are best friends, that have been best friends for the past 10 years. So that's their series, and it has this like sort of family saga line running through those as well. And then so I consider this the first spin-off, and I have a few other characters that I'd like to follow their journey and see where that goes. And I want to write an origin story for the parents, like, but that will be a novella. I really don't want to spend too much time with the parents. Um, so I want to write a few novellas in that world, but not part of the same series. But I'm not doing that just yet. Right now, I'm working on a new series that is small town, but it is still very niche. It's still very like on brand with a little bit of the death care. And it's going to be about homecomings and then coming back to your small hometown, which is based on my hometown. And uh like a lot of internal conflict again, because I think that's where I thrive, or that's where my brain likes to live. I don't know if I thrive, but
Yeah, that's something that I've learned too in like writing craft. And again, I'm not saying like absolutes for everybody, but external plot lines. Let me try that sentence again. Plot lines with external conflict could happen to anybody in the story, but internal conflict makes it more like you care more about the main character, whereas it could happen to literally any John Smith walking down the road. So I'm an internal conflict girly. So I love
yeah.
that. That's really cool. Well,
Thank you.
thank you so much for this talk. That was. Can you send me the link to that like personality test thingy that
Oh,
we were talking about?
absolutely,
Yeah, that sounds.
absolutely.
I love personality tests. So,
Yes.
and that one sounds very good for your brain as opposed to just like this is who you are and you need to do this. So,
No, it's great. And if you take it through Becca, you can take the class. It's through the Gallup organization.
okay,
You can take the test, but you can also, but if you take it through Becca Syme's course, she gives you coaching that's specifically geared toward authors.
okay,
So I highly recommend that.
very
Hmm.
cool. Well, thank you for the recommendation. I love that. Thank you.
Thanks for talking to me.
Of course. Okay. Okay, I will talk to you
All right.
later. And thank you everybody who watched. I have one more interview and then I'm going to bed. Bye,
Good night.
everybody. Bye.
Bye.